You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Ibori. On this edition, we're looking at legal reforms, constitutional reforms, judicial reforms, and in the context of business, corporate governance. My guest will be a legal practitioner, a senior advocate of Nigeria, who has a fresh perspective on the issues. Enjoy the program. We're on the Policy Council, and we're talking legal and judicial reforms. We're looking at the legal profession. And I have someone here who has a unique perspective. He was the youngest person to become a senior advocate of Nigeria in 2010 at 39. My guest is Mr. Fabian Ajogu-San. You're welcome, Fabian.
Thank you, Opemi.
It's my pleasure to have you here. Let's start with, because I want to talk about legal education, but I want to start with your own peculiar story, your route to SAN. Why do you think it happened so fast for you?
I was opportune to have started early, to have been born into a family where there's a strong background to law practice.
Your father became SAN 9 years earlier than you.
Yes, he took the silk in year 2000. So growing up in that sort of background, you had to interact with lawyers, judges, and you learn the rich traditions of the bar, traditions of courtesy, traditions of professionalism, and to know that the only thing you sell in the long term is your integrity.
So you spoke about rich traditions of the law. To what extent are you comfortable that those traditions are being maintained today in the legal profession?
This has been a gradual diminution of that tradition over time. It's eroded. There was a time when what you said in court was your bond. You could expect to get unbiased determination of your disputes on the merits, but you know the reverse has become the case. Not in all instances, not in all judges, I must say. There are still judges who labor hard and work hard, and we still have eminent jurists. But then what is happening today is disturbing because the pervading corruption has crept into a segment of our society that borders on justice, and that is more worrisome.
I trained as a lawyer, but I've not worked in that sector. But when you look at from outside, the feeling I think amongst most Nigerians is that lawyers are just as corrupt, and I certainly am not talking about you, but many people in society feel that, and in particular the law and the media, and you can be a spokesman of the law. What do you think accounts for that? Is it to what extent is it a perception, and to what extent is it reality? And what do you think has accounted for that portion that may be reality?
The perception is as important as reality, because if you don't perceive that you will get justice or that you're in a system where the rule of law truly thrives, it's as important as it's not happening. Why have I said so? Because of foreign direct investments. If people who will invest in this economy don't think that the justice sector is straightforward, then it's very important. And what has caused this over time is simply the culture of impunity. We have not had people debarred or with their practicing license suspended for misconduct. We're not having a lot of the corruption cases dealt with, or people successfully prosecuted, underline successfully prosecuted. And so what us has done is that people just think they can do it, you know it, you can suspect it, but nothing happens. And so it breeds those who have walked the narrow path begin to think that perhaps they should have gone the wide and broad way. And that broad way is really where most of the society is delving into, especially those who are in key positions. The moment we admit it and begin to do something about it, the better, rather than living like an ostrich and pretending it's not there.
The solutions?
The bench, to start with, the appointment and selection of judges is something very, very serious, we have to have a background check. We have to look at the track record of this practitioner, because you have to have been practicing law for a minimum of 10 years before you get elevated to the bench as a judge. So it's important to go back to the antecedent. And again, we need to look critically at this federal character question. Yes, the federal character has been entrenched in our Constitution, but there's nothing that says it will be there to the detriment of meritocracy, of standards. So we should not sacrifice meritocracy on the altar of federal character. That is a very major point in terms of policy reforms. And then secondly, there should be a feedback mechanism. There should be a medium to whistle blow, and then that whistle blowing taken seriously. And then lastly, to deal with it is another thing that we need to look at: remuneration of judges. I think that remuneration is not a one fixed issue. It's something that is ongoing. You need to constantly remember that the judge is a member of the society with double-digit inflation, and deal with it as things go on. I'm not saying that if you put all the money in the world to someone, you free him of temptation, but let it be that the society, the government, was not found wanting in remunerating the judges, and I think that will go a long way into keeping them in the hallowed chambers where they ought to and should be.
Okay, Fabian, let's take a break, and we'll be right back and continue this conversation about what to do about the law. We're back on the Policy Council, and Fabian Ajogu is still with me, SAN. Fabian, talking about legal judicial reforms, let's start from the case of James Ibori. He was charged. There was the allegation that he had a prior conviction. The Nigerian court system, up to the Supreme Court, said James Onanefe Ibori 1 is different from James Onanefe Ibori 2. Then he was charged with over 100 counts of corruption, and the Nigerian court system found him, well, was unable to convict him, and then he's serving a jail term in London. What do you think that says about our judicial system?
The case of Ibori is an indictment on us as a country, indictment on the judiciary, on the profession, and may I say, on the population as well. I used to think that it was a harsh statement to say that the people deserve the leader they get, but I'm beginning to understand that what that statement means is that the people must also have a strong say in the kind of leadership. James Onanefe Ibori has always been one and the same person. I cannot understand why that decision was given. We respected it because it was the apex court, simply because it's the final court. But then we now know better. It's one and the same person with records. I think we all knew that there was some misconduct in the handling of the affairs of the state. We knew that the treasury was not being properly kept or handled. And I think in December of 2008 or 9, I can't be precise now, let me go back to who was the anti-corruption boss at the time, Nuhu Ribadu, kept him in detention for approximately 54 days. Of course, there are constitutional issues to it, but he had a strong conviction. What did the citizenry do when subsequently Nuhu Ribadu was demoted twice, eventually shoved out of office? These same people did nothing. I'm connecting this with the people deserve the leadership they get. But then let's go to the courtroom where he is discharged and acquitted of all the counts. I think we now know better, looking at it, that probably the state and the people did not get justice. Ibori got what he wanted, but the state and the people...
Actually, at that time, Ibori was the state. He was running the Yar'Adua presidency by some accounts.
Well, it's some of those things that are invisible to everyone, but behind the scenes. No man should become the state, however powerful or influential. We have lost so much to for Ibori, there are probably 2, 3, or 10 more such incidents that haven't been still properly dealt with. Some are still before the Federal High Court, still undergoing trial, but we have to bring such to an end. Let the people know whether this man who was entrusted with the Commonwealth dipped his hands into it or not, be discharged, acquitted, or convicted. We cannot keep the trial on for more than 2 terms of the incumbent. So I think that it's a watershed, it's a milestone. I personally don't feel good about it, and I don't think any Nigerian should feel good about it. So it's a real problem.
So what kind of reforms? I mean, we started with the judges in the earlier segment, but what kind of reforms would you like in the entire system of judicial administration? Criminal law, prosecution, policing and law enforcement. What do you think we need to do to have a better success rate with convicting people?
First of all, I think that we have a lot to do in terms of the quality of investigation. You know the background to saying that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. It is the feeling that it is better than that 9 guilty men go scot-free than that 1 innocent person is convicted. If the case is compromised at the point of gathering forensic evidence, however upright the judge is, however determined the prosecutor is, you will get nothing.
Fabian, let me stop you there. We'll take a short break and we'll continue with this conversation right after.
Who knows Abi better thing? Abi who know like better thing? All these fine things where they see so. Now money government they take do am now. Abi, I think it's like, you know, I mean, excuse me, I dey pay my tax. I dey do it thing, I dey pay my tax. Say you don't pay your own tax. If you pay your tax, I pay oh.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. Fabian, you were talking about improving the quality of investigation. Please continue your trend of thought.
Yes. You need to go down to those who are charged with the responsibility for investigation. Basically the police. And you may then look at the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission or ICPC, which are specialized units. But then if you do not deal with the problem at that point, then whatever you're taking to the courtroom is nothing, it's no good. I've been privileged to work on reforming the police for the Presidential Committee. And I think the basic thing is that the police, and I have to say this with all seriousness, perhaps one of the most neglected segments of the society. And so we tend to think they're not doing this, but the truth is they're not properly funded, they're not properly remunerated, and then you give a man who is poorly remunerated a gun. And you have to understand the responsibilities you're entrusted.
Or you ask him to investigate someone who stole $15 billion.
And when he hasn't been paid. Now, I'm not justifying that to say that that should be the reason to sell his integrity, but we need to go down to do better training of the police, better structure of the police. Thirdly, decentralization. I'm not saying state police. Decentralization of police operations and governance structure for the police. The police was created on a 3-stand tripod. The operations, which is headed by the IG, the discipline, promotion and rank, which is the Police Service Commission, but there's a third one which is neglected, the Nigerian Police Council, which has responsibility to administer, supervise, organize the police. That is actually the board of directors, if I may say, of the police.
That includes the state governors, doesn't
it? It's a 39-member panel. 36 of them are the state governors, when with the president, the IG, and the Police Service Commission chairman, that's 39. They are responsible for looking after the police. If we strengthen this body, strengthen the operations and the remuneration of police, decentralize their work to the divisional police level, you will find, and I believe so, better efficiency. I personally think that at a certain level, the police should not prosecute crime. you should have either the State Ministry of Justice or the Federal Ministry of Justice or the EFCC's retained counsel, or by fiat from the AG's office, because this is serious business. Prosecuting someone who stole spanners and tools from a workshop is not the same thing as prosecuting someone alleged to have stolen 5 billion. You will agree that the later one requires some higher level sophistication, stronger personality, better qualification and experience, and this is largely missing in a lot of the things we do. And then lastly, to the man who decides, the bench. At that stage, what I will be talking about is integrity, not necessarily competence. Integrity and the willpower to do what one ought to do. To be a bold judge, look at fair hearing principles, look at the evidence before you, and convict, for crying out loud, where there ought to be a conviction. That will restore confidence of the people and foreigners, investors, in our system.
Okay. Let's talk very quickly before this segment closes on crime and on the security of the other type. We now have terror. We have, and we don't seem to have even had one successful prosecution for terrorism. We have Boko Haram. As a lawyer, it recently occurred to me, and I want your view on this, that some of these things we gloss over with, say, the killings of over 100 people in Jos. Do they or don't they rise to the level of crimes against humanity, genocide, even ethnic cleansing? Because I see a pattern in which we've had these things. We arguably had significant genocide during the Civil War, but we never said anything about it. And that has continued. And do you think, do you think are the legal standards for what is going on in
I think what is happening in my country, our country now, is really very sad, because it's going to take a long time to come out of the impact, even if everything stopped now. I think that we're dealing with terrorism, we're dealing with political strife. It's a multifaceted problem, and a multifaceted problem sometimes requires multifaceted approach to solutions. Number one being to continue the functions of the state, which is try to protect lives and properties. It's a basic responsibility of government, and that has to be carried out. You need to protect them. At the same time, track and hunt down, and parallel to that, leave a window open for dialogue. Because most politically motivated strife, such as this, would require some dialogue at some point, but then some policing, some preemptive approach. There should be no one approach to it. There have been 1 or 2 arrests, ongoing cases, and they're still ongoing, so I probably won't be commenting on them. But the truth is that we need to have more convictions of the bigger fellows whilst having dialogue and protecting the state. It's sad. It's a very unfortunate thing that we found ourselves in.
Thank you. We'll come back for our final segment on the Policy Council. Stay tuned. You're welcome back to the Policy Council. I've been having a fascinating discussion with Fabian Ajogu, SAN, on Nigeria's legal judicial system. But let's close this, Fabian, with a discussion on 2 topics very quickly: constitutional reforms and corporate governance on the business side. What kind of reforms would you like to see on this in our current 1999 Constitution?
The key reform, and I like to take this from a very broad and important perspective, is we need to have a constitution that reflects the federal nature of our existence. We need to have a true federal structure where the regions will compete in a healthy manner, cooperate in a healthy manner, and that way there will be better assurance of our mutual existence. There will be less scrambling for cake sharing instead of cake baking. In the 60s and 70s, we had one region, the North, known for groundnut produce, groundnut pyramids, textiles, that have disappeared. The Southwest had its cocoa and had many scholarships and all that. That has vanished. The Southeast had palm produce and so on. Everybody had something to contribute.
There was a focus on comparative advantage.
What is happening now is everybody is queued up in a prebendalistic manner, waiting for their own allocation. And all of this is weakening the country. Actually, our country is the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But we're not having a true federal system. That is the key reform. You can go into the
details.
Others of talking electoral reforms and so on.
But they build from that basic foundational
level. That is
a
key element.
Now let's close with business. I mean, I know you work a lot in the corporate sector. I have an interest in economics, and I know you've been a pioneer from the legal side in the issue of corporate governance. Most Nigerians, and I think correctly, will believe that the standards of corporate governance in Nigeria, in our businesses, in our firms, and if you look at the subsidy scam, it's a corporate governance issue. If you look at bribes that are paid, corruption, to a significant extent, it involves corporate governance, the way our firms are governed. What would you like to see change?
First of all, just to hit the nail on this corporate governance, I choose to see ownership from a very funny perspective. The right to destroy. I can burn this jacket, it's mine, and nobody can say anything however you disapprove. But the minute I collect monies from you and some other people to mend it, dry clean it, then I lose the right to destroy it. That is all we're asking. Run the company in a way that reflects that there are other stakeholders, depositors in the case of banks, or just shareholders in the case of a normal company. The key problem in Nigeria and corporate governance is not an absence of code. I worked in the Atedo Petroside Committee and issued the code in 2003 and another one in 2011 and the CBN in 2006, even the insurance and PENCOM. It is behavioral problem, theft if we put it crudely. Now, but the issue is this. To deal with our corporate governance, we need to look at the models of companies, structures we're doing, where the core owner, dominant shareholder or family, receives their returns on investments at the base level, residual, such as dividends, that company is bound to be well run. Because you have income minus expense, profit, and dividends. But where the dominant owner receives his returns contractually, he is a landlord of the company, he is a creditor of the company, he is a supplier of his raw materials, he tends to take away his returns above the bottom line. That company, more often
and therefore
than
his stake in that residual profit
is not interested, so it's not going to be properly run. Having said that, we think that corporate governance today requires board responsibility, financial reporting, disclosures to people, and proper behavior, because you've been entrusted with the enterprise, and that is what is expected.
Thank you very much, Fabian. It's been a fantastic discussion. We'll surely have you back on the Policy Council someday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll be back.
My name is Onye Mike Nzago. I live in Lagos, where things are getting better every day. Our school has just been renovated and they give us free notebooks too. Going to school is easier and safer for students like me because I can cross the highway using the footbridge, and I use the BRT bus, which is fast, convenient and free for students like me. I enjoy looking at the beautiful streets on my way to school, and the many street signs tell me where exactly I am. When I get to Basic 12, the government will pay the fees for my GCE and NECO examinations. I am happy. My mom and dad says all these good things are happening because they pay their taxes. I hope to pay my taxes when I grow up and start working. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
It's been a fantastic discussion today with Fabian Ajogu-San. And the key themes from Fabian are in terms of the standards of appointment of judges, remuneration of judges, and the welfare of judges, and of course, focus on integrity and the background of those appointed to the bench. In terms of the police, it's been about improving capacity, strengthening investigations, forensics, operations, and of course decentralizing the police to ensure it works better at subsidiary levels of the Federation. We must avoid impunity in relation to governance and business, and we must combat corruption. The Ibori case, we all agreed, was a clear case of how not to enforce law and to combat corruption. Finally, both in terms of the business, corporate governance, and society, government, we must strengthen the effectiveness of institutions. It's been a good program. See you next time on the Policy Council.